And so we're being trained on how to kayak in the River Thames. And this is a river in Marianna, Florida. The current is a formidable opponent, if you'll allow me to share that. And I'm with my boy Edwar, and Edwar's never kayaked before. And I'm no professional myself, but I have some reps under my belt, so I knew what needed to happen. Well, first things first, we got to get the kayak in the water. Then we got to get inside the kayak. Well, that goes off without a hitch. Edwar, he doesn't believe in himself, but I believe in him. And so we're getting going. The film team, the film crew is filming. I lean over to the film crew. I say, "You're going to want to get this. This is Edwar's first time on the kayak." Well, on my left, and the kayak instructor, let me pause and go back. The kayak instructor shared that it was important to not run into any trees, not to go into the trees. You never know what's there. Well, on my left is my dear friend Kristen and one of her comrades. And Edwar and I were looking at the camera. We begin to kayak and then we begin to turn. You guessed it, left and to the trees. We ran straight into the trees at 4 miles an hour and cut Kristen off. So it was beautiful and powerful. It was quite a moment, really. But there was something also that was beautiful is Edwar caught a cramp right in the abdomen. And he proclaims, oh, I'm done. I'm cramping up. I can't move. And we're sitting in the back. I'm sitting in the front. So we're kayaking a mile out. And then at a mile, we get to a swimming hole. We jump out. We go back a mile. Well, for a decent portion of that, Edwar's got to recover from the cramp. I love him to death. Don't hear me when I say it. And whenever we were kayaking together, we were moving like a cheetah, like a gazelle in a pasture of turtles. You should have seen us out there. Well, we get out there and we jump out. Then it's time to get back in. And that was a comedy in and of itself. Of course, I have no video evidence, so you'll have to take my word for it. But quite frankly, it was one of the greatest moments of my previous week. And so we get back out there, and then both Edwar and I are at full health. My toe cramped up a little bit getting back in the kayak, but that's it. That's okay. Shot some pickle juice right into my veins, and we carried on. Well, we start to get back. We get going, and we were cruising. We were cutting everybody off, sometimes on accident, sometimes on purpose. And you may be wondering, what in the world kind of event are you at? Where you're kayaking with people that you're cutting off. You have film crews. You must be filming something that you're famous for. On the contrary, my friend, we are quite infamous. We are the lowest of the low when it comes to familiarity. But we were at Youth Camp 2026 at Westside. This was in Marianna, Florida, as previously mentioned. And the kayaking experience was just one experience in hosts of experiences. You know, I had the honor of running the technical side of things, and that's not something I'm gifted at, but it's certainly something that the Lord has allowed me to do for the past week. And to be frank with you all, I don't usually enjoy the task-based technical systems, etc. But there was something about this week that there was new life, new meaning, and excitement. I enjoyed the team, working together with the team. It was thrilling, and I think I have the good Lord to thank for that. But as we were on the kayak, I was also pondering, you know, if you have two people on a kayak and you're both going pulling opposite directions, you're kind of doing the opposite of one another. You're not working toward the same goal, in which case you're either pushing further left, you're pushing further right, or you're just going slow altogether. But when you communicate left two, right two, left one, right one. You're all working to the same goal. You're all moving toward the same beat, if you will, and you're all putting in equal effort. And you know you're doing this because you have the same goal, reach that destination. I think there's something beautiful about unity in mission, and kayaking is just one of those things. Notice how I didn't say unity in tasks. You know, I think unity is not defined as everybody doing the same thing. It is defined as everybody moving toward the same goal, doing different things. You know, the Lord has gifted you, my fellow listener, with specific gifts, specific things. Maybe you're not a born-again Christian. The Lord's still given you a gift of intellect in your job. You have certain passions, and you're using those to move forward, not just yourself, but to move forward whoever you're working for as far as the organization goals. And that, excuse me, that organization, it has a mission. And whether that mission is as simple as drive profits, or that mission is as grand as creating a nation in a world where life can flourish, joining everyday people on the journey to life's greatest potential in Christ. Whatever that mission may be, you and your fellow coworkers and laborers are working toward that same thing, but you're not necessarily doing the exact same thing. And so just keep that in mind. I think it's beautiful. And it's a lesson on not just kayaking, but life as well. Well, the theme of the youth camp was war in the heavens. Our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. And one thing to remember whenever you read that verse is, notice how it doesn't say God's battle isn't against flesh and blood, but it's against powers and principalities. Notice how it says our battle, the humans. And so I think we can be quick to say, well, God versus Satan, God versus the enemy. When in reality, God is in complete control and has complete sovereignty over the enemy. And I think we can rest in that truth. That helps us fight the battle. You know, there's a song out there, this is how I fight my battles. This is how I fight my battles. When it looks like I'm surrounded, oh, I'm surrounded by you, that's the Lord. And our first line of offense is on our knees in prayer. Something to remember. It's not God versus the enemy. It's us versus powers and principalities. And if we are not relying on the Lord, who is in complete control of not only us, but powers and principalities, what goes on, then we will lose. We will lose to the flesh, the very thing that the Bible says our battle is not against. Isn't that fascinating? And so I think that takes prayer, that takes discernment, that takes wisdom, that takes humility, saying, Lord, I can't fight this battle. I need you, and I need brothers and sisters to come alongside of me. So that's just a little bit about what we talked about youth camp, but you're probably not interested in as much as that as you are about this beach trip, because we did a Navarre podcast filming. You kind of heard the waves crashing for 50 minutes straight. And you're like, man, that was the worst podcast I've ever listened to. And what's sad is it's probably true because you couldn't hear anything, but it was probably one of the better podcasts that we filmed, Brett and myself. But you know Brett and Rodrigo's issues that are ongoing in person. They don't like to talk to each other in person. So we had to make the hard decision of Rodrigo wasn't allowed to come to the beach. And so that left me, the non-tech guy, trying to set up the cameras and everything. And that was a whirlwind. And obviously all you heard was wind and whirl and no voices. So I'd like to apologize on behalf of myself, on behalf of Brett, and on behalf of Rodrigo, though Rodrigo is probably thinking, well, that problem could have been fixed had you had me there. But he missed out on the fun. If you didn't see, we did a travel vlog, and we used a 1900s camcorder for it, the Samsung something. or other. It was vibey. A couple memories that stick out to me was Stetson, which is my nephew, Brett's son. Jackson made this 7-course delectable fine dining fish meal. Grouper was the main. But part of that was pearls and fries and pearls or something to that drum. Well, there was some leftover caviar. Pearls means caviar in the Gulf, as they call it. And you look at the pearls, there's a lot of pearls left. Jackson says, Stetson, you want some pearls? And you wouldn't think a 3-year-old would just eat pearls like that. Well, he took a handful and just shoved them right in his mouth. Well, we didn't get that on camera, so we said, Stetson, will you do it again? He said, yes. And so he did it. We got it on camera. You can check that video out here on the YouTube. It might be linked here in the show notes. But that was pretty riveting. That was a cool moment. Another cool moment, if you've been following this podcast for a long time, is you would know that we had an encounter with fire. A couple of years back, we set the dunes on fire, and it was a big hubbub around those parts. National news was involved, firefighters, police officers, and people were yelling, fire, fire, pee on it, which was highly inappropriate at the time. And Brett, he made some decisions that shouldn't be repeated, and I won't repeat them, but they were beautiful decisions. And I ran a country mile away from the officers of the law that were on the search for the culprits, and Jackson got caught, misdemeanor. Well, it was time to avenge what we did. Not avenge, but reclaim, recuperate, and make up for our wrongdoings, if you will. So we're walking out there, 4th of July, me, Brett, Jackson, and we're on the boardwalk, and you won't believe it, we start hearing shouting, fire, fire. Well, the dunes are up in flames. It's happened to someone else, and we were just like, who would do such a thing? Idiots. Come on, guys, y'all got to be smarter than that. And that was beautiful, but there was something even more beautiful, is Brett and I, we witnessed Jackson become a first responder. He was a hero that night, the night of July 4th, 2026. He jumped the boardwalk fence. He ran in his sandals. He kicked sand right behind him. The dust was forming behind him, and he put out that fire with the help of 5 other beautiful gentlemen and gentlewomen, to be frank with you. It was a stunning show of ferocious character. He would not be stopped from saving the dunes. And the rest of the beach was fantastic. It really was. We're thankful for the time there. Today in church, we talked about this dust in the wind. You know, there's a song by the band Kansas, Dust in the Wind. And it was just talking about how if we don't have Christ, our life is dust to dust. If we do have Christ, our life is dust to dust, but we have a hope, and we know that the dust is not in vain. But we can be so easily. So one thing that spoke to me is that we have a tendency to think about the season that we're preparing for defining your whole life story. And I think that's a temptation I fall into. And even more so whenever I was younger, thinking about being so focused on the future, my future, that I wasn't able to focus on my present. And I think it's a good reminder that if everything we do is going to turn to dust, eventually, I'm not saying everything we do is in vain. I'm saying everything we do can have a tendency. It's not everlasting. That's what I'm saying. Then why are we so focused on the future that we're setting ourselves up for such great success, or what we think would be success in the future, that we're missing how the Lord is working in our current state, or we're so focused on how bad we are in the past or how good we were in the past that we are missing what the Lord is doing in our current state. And so the question is, how do I be obedient to the Lord today? Not just the future, not in the past, but ask the Lord, how can you be obedient to Him today? Would you show me your way today? There's a great verse, give us this our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. And it's a good reminder. It's not always easy to focus on the day-to-day for someone like myself. I think we are all wired differently. I admire people who really are great at living in the moment, experiencing things fully. It makes me think of, I was on a mission trip here in March, and we were at, we just went to an ice cream shop. It was beautiful. I don't know if the listener, you're going to appreciate this story, but there's this young man named Brock, and he goes to the ice cream shop for the first time, and there's this famous ice cream flavor called the Elvis. And I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's something like peanut butter and chocolate. Well, you would have thought he struck gold. He was in the California mining, and he struck gold in the whatever year that was, 1860s. Well, a couple days later, we go back to that same ice cream shop. This guy is on top of the world. He's so happy. He says it's the best ice cream he's ever had. He walks in the shop. First thing he says, he looks at the guy who was not there. He says, "Do you remember me?" And the guy's like, And then Brock's like, "I ordered the Elvis." And the guy was like, We have so many customers, and that's our favorite flavor, our customer's favorite flavor. But it was so beautiful because it was so innocent, and it was so true, and it was so ripe, if you'll allow me to use that word. Brock lived in the moment. He experienced that in the moment. He was happy, experiencing life to its fullest. And I think that's one of the beautiful things we can see. How can we see God's glory in the present? We can plan all we want, but you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so how do we see God's glory? How do we make God known in the present? And you'll hear this and you'll think, well, what's the point of doing anything if everything's in vain? Well, I think there's things that God uses for His eternal impact. There's all kinds of things. That's a promise in Scripture. He's working all things for the good of those who love Him. But good is being more like God's Son, Jesus Christ, not necessarily making your life easier. In fact, if you look at the life of Jesus, I'd say that's far from easy. And whenever we accept Jesus, we accept and commit to being more like Him. And so we shouldn't expect things to get easier. We should actually expect our earthly lives to become a little more difficult in the day-to-day, in the circumstances. However, it becomes easier in how we handle it because we have hope of eternity. And so if I could encourage you with anything, I hope that's an encouragement, is no matter what you're going through, no matter what season you're in, it's not defining, as we discussed this morning, but your response is continually informed by your position in the Lamb's Book of Life, which is sealed, signed, and delivered, my friend. And so I'm thankful for you listening to this podcast. There's some exciting things happening coming down the pipeline. We've got some sponsorships happening. I just want to keep you up to date. Shout out Palm and Pine Embroidery. There's something happening within the next 2 calendar years. And that's something to look forward to. If you enjoy this podcast, go ahead and give it a rating. We'd love for you to let us know how you feel about it. Don't judge us on the Navarre Beach episode. That one was atrocious. but perhaps judge us on some other ones that you enjoy that are worthy of 5 stars. And if there's anything you can do, or that we can do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out to the chat boards. Again, you'll get to see a little bit of Stetson and his character on the vlog that'll be linked in the show notes. And one song that I've been listening to recently is Rip the Roof Off by Legacy Nashville. I'd encourage you to give it a listen. That reminds me, there was a moment at the youth camp. We were singing Lace Up Your Boots, Put on Your Backpack, It's Time to Ride. Everybody was dancing, and we transitioned straight into Hot Dog by Mickey Mouse. And you could tell I just spent a week with my niece and nephew because I was on top of all the Disney things and Pixar things. You've Got a Friend in Me was a hit. The Lorax was a hit. So the Trolls was a hit. But I think the best one was Hot Dog, Hot Diggity Dog. Also, the Itsy Bitsy Spider, the trap remix of the Itsy Bitsy Spider, is another banger if you need more listening recommendations. I think that should hold you over till the next time we see you. Prayerfully, I'll be with Brett. Brett and I will be going to a family reunion this upcoming weekend, and along with some other exciting things happening, we may go hit a golf course. We may play Monopoly into the evening, if you will, the early hours of the morning as well. Those games usually last 6 hours or so, so I expect to be awake for quite some time. But you know what I'm looking forward to most in my week is 7 days from now. Because I love you deeply and generously, Brett loves you deeply and generously, and Rodrigo might do more than love you deeply and generously, but he at least does that. And that's why we're going to see you in 7 days.